My friend Steve said, uh-oh, did I freeze for a second? Technology. My friend Steve emailed me with words of encouragement along the lines of, you're probably not going to finish. You're probably going to get bogged down where you always get bogged down. I won't, Steve. Look me in my eyes. These beautiful brown pools. No one has ever said that. I'm going to finish Middlemarch. I'm going to read the whole goddamn thing. And we're up to chapter 8. Hi, I'm Mike Bevel. This is Footnotes. This season is Middlemarch. Let's begin. It opens with an epigraph, epigram, whatever comes before the chapter title. I mean, the chapter number, small quotation, chapter. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. This one is an interesting one. Oh, rescue her. I am her brother now, and you her father. Every gentle maid should have a guardian, and each gentleman. And that's certainly not something that is expressed a lot in today's culture. We don't assume all women need a male protector. Though there are waves of that, and there are pockets of that still, especially in, what's the polite way to say it? Sort of southern racist states, still have this idea of some kind of gentility as a way to maybe make up for the fact that they owned people when they shouldn't have ever. Yeah, I went there. This is going to get political. It's not going to get too much more political. But I think often communities like women, like gay people, like Black communities and such, are often told what they need rather than asked what they need. Like the help that people want to provide is not the help that maybe the community needs. And it's a big distinction. It's an important distinction that the help you want to give may not be the help that is necessary. And that doesn't speak ill to your intentions. You're a generous, kind-hearted person who wanted to do a kindness. But where it does become a problem is when you then hold the other person accountable for not accepting your help or judge them for not accepting your help. And it's the difference between the help you want and the help that's given. Or the other way around, the help that's needed may not be the help that you have. And you just have to be okay with that. And it's a tough thing to be okay with, especially if you are an extroverted doer who wants to be seen in all the places doing all the things. Some places just, you're not gonna be a help, you're gonna be a hindrance. It was wonderful to Sir James Chettam how well he continued to like going to the Grange after he had once encountered the difficulty of seeing Dorothea for the first time in the light of a woman who was engaged to another man. Of course, the forked lightning seemed to pass through him when he first approached her, and he remained conscious throughout the interview of hiding uneasiness. But good as he was, it must be owned that his uneasiness was less than it would have been if he thought his rival a brilliant and desirable match. He had no sense of being eclipsed by Mr. Casaubon. He was only shocked that Dorothea was under a melancholy illusion, and his mortification lost some of its bitterness by being mingled with compassion. We hear that a lot, right? Like, people sort of feel better. Somebody leaves somebody for somebody less attractive. It's not as much of a blow to the ego. It used to be a joke in the 90s and maybe even in the early 2000s that like maybe it hurt less if your partner left you for someone of the same sex since you clearly couldn't compete with that. I don't know. It's not a great joke. Nevertheless, while Sir James said to himself that he had completely resigned her, since with the perversity of a Desdemona she had not effected a proposed match that was clearly suitable and according to nature, he could not yet be quite passive under the idea of her engagement to Mr. Casaubon. On the day when he first saw them together in the light of his present knowledge, it seemed to him that he had not taken the affair seriously enough. Brooke was really culpable. He ought to have hindered it. Who could speak to him? Something might be done, perhaps even now, at least to defer the marriage. On his way home, he turned to the rectory and asked for Mr. Cadwallader. Happily, the rector was at home, and his visitor was shown into the study where all the fishing tackle hung. But there's a weird trend, and you may not know this if you're not a man interested in the physical bodies of other men. But there's a lot of straight guys who like to take pictures shirtless with a fish. Like they caught this fish, but they also had to take their shirt off and they would just want to pose. It's very odd. Um, I've never wanted to have my picture taken, but I've never wanted to have my picture taken with a dead fish, or let alone like a dead deer. That also does. I mean, why is that not on the list of serial killer opportunities? Where did we go? On his way home, he turned into the rectory and asked for Mr. Cadwallader. Happily, the rector was at home, and his visitor was shown into the study where all the fishing tackle hung. But he himself was in a little room adjoining, at work with his turnings apparatus, and he called to the baronet to join him there. The two were better friends than any other landholder and clergyman in the country, a significant fact which was in agreement with the amiable expression of their faces. Mr. Cadwallader was a large man with full lips and a sweet smile, very plain and rough in his exterior, but with that solid, imperturbable ease and good humor which is infectious, and like great grassy hills in the sunshine, quiets even an irritated egoism and makes it rather ashamed of itself. Isn't that a lovely way to describe someone? I would want someone to say, they can't. I would want someone to say that about me. It's not me. Well, how are you? He said, showing a hand not quite fit to be grasped. Sorry I missed you before. Is there anything particular? You look vexed. Sir James's brow had a little crease in it, a little depression of the eyebrow, which he seemed to purposefully exaggerate as he answered. It is only this conduct of Brooks. I really think somebody should speak to him. What? Meaning to stand? So, just a reminder, there's a couple things that Mr. Brooke has done wrong in different people's eyes. One, he's going to stand as a liberal. That's not necessarily what the neighborhood wants, and he's going to, unless he's going to stand as a conservative. And I just get it all flip flop the way Republicans used to be good because they were Lincoln, and then they became COVID carriers, I think is a polite way to refer to them. Anyway, what mean to stand? The other thing that Mr. Brooke is in trouble for, of course, is this marriage of Dorothea to Casaubon. The neighborhood is all astir about this. And so, and just in terms of, stop shaking the camera, Mike. Just in terms of the history of the time, it would be big news in a neighborhood of any kind of marriage like that. It would pass around, it would be gossiped about. That would be the main thing. There was nothing else to talk about. Maybe books, but mostly gossip. And gossip has currency to it. Gossip gets you a lot of places. And it can also get you in trouble in the long run too. So it's not always useful, but it can be. What, meaning to stand, said Mr. Cadwallader, going on with the arrangement of the reels which he had just been turning. I hardly think he means it, but where's the harm if he likes it? Anyone who objects to Whiggery should be glad when the Whigs don't put up the strongest fellow. They won't overturn the Constitution with our friend Brooks's head for a battering ram. Oh, I don't mean that, said Sir James, after putting down his hat and throwing himself into a chair, and began to nurse his leg and examine the sole of his boot with much bitterness. I mean this marriage. I mean his letting that blooming young girl marry Casaubon. Well, what is the matter with Casaubon? I see no harm in him, if the girl likes him. She is too young to know what she likes. which is both true, but also not true. Like, it's a true answer because young people don't know what they want. But what we as old people forget is we fought really hard to make those bad choices. People are always going to fight to make bad choices when they're young. Um, and then they get older and then they try to give that advice to the young. Like, we are all Cassandras, and you can look that up. Let's see. She is too young to know what she likes. Her guardian ought to interfere. He ought not to allow the thing to be done in this headlong manner. I wonder a man like you, Cadwallader, a man with daughters, can look at the affairs with indifference and with such a heart as yours. I think I hear my husband coming up the stairs. Husband, is it you?
It's me.
It's you. It's husband.
I'm going to leave for work for my first shift in a little while, so I want to say good morning and goodbye.
Good morning and goodbye. I'll come down and see you in a couple minutes.
I'll probably still be here.
Okay. He ought not to allow the thing to be done in this headlong manner. I wonder a man like you, Cadwallader, a man with daughters, can look at the affair with indifference. And with such a heart as yours, do you think seriously about it? I am not joking. I am as serious as possible, said the rector with a provoking little inward laugh. You are as bad as Eleanor. She has been wanting me to go and lecture Brooke, and I have reminded her that her friends had a very poor opinion of the match she had made when she married me. But look at Casaubon, said James indignantly. He must be 50. Again, I'm 48. He's really 45, according to Brooke. So, he must be 50, and I don't believe he could ever have been much more than the shadow of a man. Look at his legs. So, something to think about is what men were allowed to do in the 19th century that they aren't necessarily allowed to do now. And one of them is really complement each other's legs. And you could actually buy these sort of inserts for your stockings to make your calves, to make your calves look shapely, like you're a guy who does a lot of walking. So men admired other men's legs openly, and that's something we don't necessarily do now, unless we want to be a statistic. Confound you, handsome young fellows. You think of having it all your own way in the world. You don't understand women. They don't admire you half so much as you admire yourselves. Eleanor used to tell her sisters that she married me for my ugliness. It was so various and amusing that it had quite conquered her prudence. You? It was easy enough for a woman to love you, but this is no question of beauty. I don't like Casaubon. This was Sir James's strongest way of implying that he thought ill of a man's character. Why? What do you know against him? Said the rector, laying down his reels and putting his thumbs into his armholes with an air of attention. Sir James paused. He did not usually find it easy to give his reasons. It seemed to him strange that people should not know them without being told, since he only felt what was reasonable. We all know someone like that. At last he said, "Now, Cadwallader, has he got any heart?" "Well, yes. I don't mean of the melting sort, but a sound kernel, that you may be sure of. He is very good to his poor relations, pensions several of the women, and is educating a young fellow at a good deal of expense. Casaubon acts up to a sense of justice. His mother's sister made a bad match, a Pole, I think. Lost herself, at any rate was disowned by the family. If it had not been for that, Casaubon would not have had so much money by half. I believe he went himself to find out his cousins and see what he could do for them. Every man would not ring so well as that if you tried his mettle. You would, Chettam, but not every man." "I don't know," said Sir James, coloring. "I am not so sure of myself." He paused a moment and then added, That was a right thing for Casaubon to do. But a man may wish to do what is right and yet be sort of a parchment code. A woman may not be happy with him, and I think when a girl is so young as Miss Brooke is, her friends ought to interfere a little to hinder her from doing anything foolish. You laugh because you fancy I have some feeling on my own account, but upon my honor, it is not that. I should feel just the same if I were Miss Brooks's brother or uncle. From the epigram, I will learn that word. Probably never. Well, but what should you do? Well, I should say that the marriage must not be decided on until she is of age, and depend upon it, in that case, it would never come off. I wish you saw it as I do. I wish you would talk to Brooke about it. Sir James rose as he was finishing a sentence, for he saw Mrs. Cadwallader entering from the study. She held by the hand her youngest girl, about 5 years old, who immediately ran to Papa and was made comfortable on his knee. I hear what you are talking about, said his wife, but you'll make no impression on Humphrey. As long as the fish rise to his bait, everybody is what he ought to be. Bless you, Casaubon has got a trout stream and does not care about fishing in it himself. Could there be a better fellow? Well, there is something in that, said the rector with his quiet inward laugh. It is a very good quality in a man to have a trout stream. But seriously, said Sir James, whose vexations had not yet spent itself, don't you think that the rector might do some good by speaking? Oh, I told you beforehand he would say no, answered Mrs. Cadwallader, lifting up her eyebrows. I have done what I could. I wash my hands of the marriage. In the first place, said the rector, looking rather grave, it would be nonsensical to expect that it could convince Brooke and make him act accordingly. Brooke is a very good fellow, but pulpy. He will run into any mole, but he won't keep shape. He might keep shape long enough to defer the marriage, said Sir James. But, my dear Chettam, why should I use my influence on Casaubon's disadvantage, to Casaubon's disadvantage, unless I were much surer than I am that I should be acting for the advantage of Miss Brooke? I know no harm of Casaubon. I don't care about his, oh goodness, I don't care about his Vesustrus and Fee Fo Fum and the rest. He's Mr. Cadwallader is making fun of Casaubon's great work of combining all mythology, mixing Xisuthros, Xisutrus, who is the Babylonian Noah, and then Fee Fi Fo from all the fairy tales most of us grew up with. But then he doesn't care about my fishing tackle. As to the line he took on the Catholic question, that was unexpected, but he's always been civil to me, and I don't see why I should spoil his sport. For anything I can tell, Miss Brooke may be happier with him than she would be with any other man. Humphrey, I have no patience with you. You know you would rather dine under the hedge than with Casaubon alone. You have nothing to say to each other. Well, what is that to do with Miss Brooks marrying him? She does not do it for my amusement. He has got no good red blood in his body, said Sir James. No. Somebody put a drop under a magnifying glass, and it was all semicolons and parentheses, said Mrs. Cadwallader. She really is my favorite. There should just be a whole book about her. Why does he not bring out his book instead of marrying, said Sir James, with the disgust which he had held warranted by the sound feeling of an English layman. Oh, he dreams footnotes. Footnotes. Oh, he dreams footnotes, and they run away with all his brains. They say when he was a little boy, he made an abstract of Hop o' My Thumb. That's another nursery rhyme fairy tale. And he has been making abstracts ever since. Ugh. And that is the man, Humphrey goes on saying, that a woman may be happy with. Well, he is what Miss Brooke likes, said the rector. I don't profess to understand every young lady's taste. But if she were your own daughter, said Sir James, that would be a different affair. She is not my daughter, and I don't feel called upon to interfere. Casaubon is as good as most of us. He is a scholarly clergyman and creditable to the cloth. Some radical fellow speechifying at Middlemarch said Casaubon was the learned straw-chopping incumbent, and Freck was the brick-and-mortar incumbent, and I was the angling incumbent. And upon my word, I don't see that one is worse or better than the other. The rector ended with his silent laugh. He always saw the joke of any satire against himself. His conscience was large and easy, like the rest of him. It did only what it could do without any trouble. Clearly, there would be no interference with Miss Brooks's marriage through Mr. Cadwallader, and Sir James felt with some sadness that she was to have a perfect liberty of misjudgment. It was a sign of his good disposition that he did not slacken at all in his intention of carrying out Dorothea's design of the cottages. Doubtless, this persistence was the best course for his own dignity, but pride only helps us to be generous. It never makes us so, any more than vanity makes us witty. She was now enough aware of Sir James's position with regard to her to appreciate the rectitude of his perseverance in a landlord's duty, to which he had at first been urged by a lover's complaisance, and her pleasure in it was great enough to count for something even in her present happiness. Perhaps she gave to Sir James Chetham's cottages all the interest she could spare from Mr. Casaubon, or rather, from the symphony of hopeful dreams, admiring trust, and passionate self-devotion which that learned gentleman had set playing in her soul. Hence it happened that in the good baronet's succeeding visits, while he was beginning to pay small attentions to Celia, he found himself talking with more and more pleasure to Dorothea. She was perfectly unconstrained and without irritation toward him now, and he was gradually discovering the delight there is in frank kindness and companionship between a man and a woman who have no passion to hide or confess. Can men and women be friends? We thought the question was answered in When Harry Met Sally, but it was answered like 150 years before then. We did it. That was chapter 8. Chapter 9 is next. These have been fairly short chapters compared to the longer chapters. Oh, yeah, like when we get to chapter 9, we're going to be together for some time. All right, prepare yourself. Tomorrow's going to be long. That's it. I will see you next time, and I hope, I've learned a different way. I don't have to go to the end thing. I just have to press stop. And that's easier to do because it's a big red button and I can see it out of my peripheral vision. Like right now, it looks like I'm looking directly at you, but I'm also looking just under you.